Hey, worship teams, welcome back to the worship team training hangout. Man, we're so glad that you guys are here. I'm adjusting our Meerkat, so if you're on Meerkat, you can now join us at full strength. We're at Worship TT at Twitter, so forgive me as I adjust this. But hey, so glad that you're here. Today is June the 24th with our featured topic episode, Heart Before the Beat, with special guest Jon Manna. Wow, we are so excited to be back. It's great to have you back. Thank you guys for joining us here on Meerkat, also YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Google, and Pinterest, and I can keep going. But man, it is so awesome to have you guys support Worship TT. We thank you for all the emails and comments that have been flooding our gates this past week about today's topic, as well as post articles that we've been doing in the past recent week or two. And we are excited to bring you more, especially coming with our mentoring program that we've started, and also our regular workshops and our upcoming video series for training that's online. You got to watch out for that. But the mentoring thing is the coolest because we have one of those fantastic ladies here today, Stephanie Kelly. How are you today, Stephanie?
Doing well. How are you doing?
Doing awesome. The room is bigger than you.
I know. You know, I don't have my setup all happening yet because I am in Rhode Island finally. I'm in the island of Rhodes.
The island of Rhodes, but
finally got to join my military husband.
Awesome.
So yeah, I'll try to. I don't know. I'll do this if you want.
No, that's actually great. So we'll get back to what we were talking about today. And today we are going to get right back to it with Jonathan. Jonathan today, that's our son's name. So by the way, that's an awesome name, even though you stole it from my son, but it's okay. Jon Manna. Jon is a drummer. He leads an awesome ministry called worshipdrummer.ca. You can find him there. But Jon's been drumming for over 20 years, and he has a passion to equip and encourage worship drummers and also to remind them to put the heart before the beat, which is today's episode. Besides what he does over at worshipdrummer.ca, his website, Jonathan's also a full-time husband. It's great to be a full-time husband, not a half-time. Also dad and pastor based out of Toronto, Canada. We won't hold that against him. But hey, it could be worse. Quebec. He's not there. Good thing. So Jon, to visit him, go to worshipdrummer.ca. By the way, I did forewarn Jon about all the sarcasm on the show, and he's hip with it. You can also follow Jon at Jon Manna and also at Worship Drummer. So check out his website, worshipdrummer.ca, at Jon Manna on Twitter. So today, everybody, please welcome Jon Manna. How are you today, Jon?
Doing awesome, man. Thanks so much for having me and for trusting me with this time on air live.
Yes, trust is a big factor, and that's a very scary thing. But as I was sharing with Jon earlier this morning, it's awesome to have him on the show today. I found him, I don't know how we found each other, Jon. Actually, it's been about probably 2 years. We've been talking off and on Twitter and everything. But I love what he does. I mean, I actually started out playing drums and do that myself, and just to hear a lot of his posts and to read what's happening, his tweets and everything, they are really seriously geared towards worship for not just the drummer, but also the musician. And I found it to be incredible, and I just called him up about, let's say an hour ago, no, really 6 months ago, and I said, hey, it'd be great to have you on a show, so let's get this going. And he said yes, and look who's not here today. Tony and Timmons are without. Actually, that's a good thing, because then we don't have to worry about, all their yammering. Tony, speaking of, in the studio today, and Timmons is traveling, so we missed them, love them. Swift also is somewhere not to be found ever again. He will come back in 2 weeks, he tells me. That's what at least the jailers told me. But we're glad that he will be back. But I'm mainly excited to have this girl and this fine gentleman. So guys, thank you so much for joining us here today. So let's jump into our first topic question, heart before the beat. I put this post out yesterday, and it kind of went something like this. Before the note, before a word, before the beat, where does the worship go? Now, a lot of you worship leaders that we've spoken with offline and online tell us that, man, I just cannot get my team, I can't encourage them to worship. What are some ways that I can get them to be focused more on the spiritual and less on the mechanical, right? So we all know that making music is great, but when it's without Jesus, our music is just noise. The making of a worshiper is something that God seeks. We're told that. Thus, before we make anything great, including our music, we must be found in His greatness and the worship of Jesus. Reference verse 1 Corinthians 13:1. So let's go to our favorite of all, the panel that I just adore. Stephanie, Kelly, can you tell us, what does it mean to be a worshiper first?
Well, I just think it means our identity above all, everything is in Jesus. And so we're not a musician first. We're not even a wife or a husband first. We are a follower of Christ, a worshiper of Christ. And I just think worshiper has to be synonymous with what our identity is. At the very top of the list, it's that we love God with all of our heart, mind, soul, body, spirit, being. And so that's what defines us over any sort of skill or aptitude that we have,
Well put, Stephanie.
Thanks.
Jon, let's hear from you. What does it mean to be a worshiper?
Well, coming from the musician perspective, I like what Eugene Peterson says in his definition of worship. He said, worship is the strategy by which we interrupt our preoccupation with ourselves and attend to the presence of God. And oftentimes it's, what can I bring, or what can I do, what are my giftings and how can I use them? But oftentimes when we view God as our Father, what matters most is not all of those things, but just spending that time, just being, forgetting about everything else and just saying, God, there's nothing else I want to do but spend time right now with you.
Yeah. Awesome.
And that's a bit the practical side of it.
Yeah, I love that. And by the way, folks, Jon puts out some really awesome Instagrams also. You're the guy behind Sunday Seat, right? Or that's another website? You just used a hashtag?
We initially started out together.
Thought so.
And then branched out. So we're not doing it as a team per se, but on Instagram we're at worshipdrummer.ca, and we do support the Sunday Seed hashtag still.
Yeah, I love it, because every time that I see the photos, I'm always thinking, wow, I love the kit, I love the wood, and I get so carried away. I'm like, wait a minute, what am I doing? But that's kind of also, isn't it, Stephanie? That can be a little bit of the trick when we're leading worship, that we get too caught up in the gear, maybe? That was kind of a good example. What's your thought on that?
I think that we have to just get to the place, and you're right, yes, we can get really distracted by peripherals. I think we just have to get to the place where we, are playing on whatever instrument, and no matter what it sounds like, whether it's not tuned, and, for me, in my case, I've played on keyboards that their sustain pedal doesn't work, and you try to be prepared and make sure all that is taken care of before the fact, but if for some reason it's not, you just have to be so at ease worshiping your God in any situation that just doesn't affect it, and it also is not obvious to the audience, because they're somewhat codependent. We're all somewhat codependent when it comes to our worship leading, so if they see us uncomfortable and distracted, then it's going to affect their worship also. So right. So Jon, how do we, taking what Stephanie said, how do we keep our team members focused on worship? What are some things that you've done within your team?
Well, what we try to do, so instead of showing up to a rehearsal and just rushing straight to our instruments, because we can get so consumed and start tuning and plugging in and sound checking, and then we forget and lose sense of what we're actually supposed to be there for. So I try to have our team sit down. I say, hey guys, get off your instruments. Thanks for setting up, but let's sit down. Let's take a seat. Try to crack open the Bible, or if I found something inspiring during the week that would just refocus ourselves on what we're doing and why. I find that carries a lot of weight in the sense of, now that we've understood the why we do it, now let's go and work on the how we have to do it, and then it makes sense.
Right. Awesome. Stephanie, you've done a lot of worship leading out in the California area. So it's kind of cool because we have, North America, and then we have North America differences. So tell us, Stephanie, what have you done within your team that's similar to what Jon has done?
Well, I don't know. I don't have a good answer.
It was a cliffhanger.
I think just constantly just trying to practice the presence of God in everything that you're doing. Yeah. So
Don McMahon.
What?
Practicing the presence of God. Don McMahon. Awesome. Yeah. That goes back to the 80s.
And I mean, it may sound trite or over spiritual, but it really is practice.
Yeah.
It is, because we're still humans, and I think that sometimes our spirituality, I mean, it doesn't come natural. We're on this side of heaven, and we just have to make every effort to live as Christ living in us. And so, and that's something Timmons talks about a lot, is, the kingdom of heaven here on earth. Even though it may not be obvious, we have to act by faith as though it is, because it is, Right. So, no, I think one thing that is maybe misunderstood in the whole worship arena is that it is a difficult trade. It is a difficult calling. It is a difficult, occupation and ministry to have. And so I think our stresses are taxed and tested. And so just always having those short accounts with God as a worship leader, as a lead worshiper, as a worship pastor, director, just being the first to say, you know what, man, let's just pray, or I'm feeling upset or stressed, challenged about this. Just being vulnerable and honest and saying, hey, I don't have it all together today, and saying I'm sorry. So keeping short accounts with God and keeping short accounts with your people, I think, is important, and really trying to keep our attitudes in check, and being a servant. I just rambled.
No, you didn't, actually. I was speaking with a really good friend, worship leader, yesterday on the phone, and we talked about this very same thing. I think we get into this crux of time, especially worship leaders. There's so much that we have to go through within a rehearsal to make sure that we're getting everything done by the clock. Yeah. And I think that we forget often that who and what we're leading goes way beyond the music. And if you read our articles and posts that we put up, and even the mentoring program that we have that Stephanie is very much a part of, and if you'd like to study with her, by the way, please hit us up. And if you have questions on today's show, at WorshipTT and hashtag WorshipTeamHangout. We take this very seriously because, like Jon, who is a leader within his church and what he does at Worship Drumming, this is a very serious deal that it's almost like this is going to be our next show with Rich Kilpatrick coming up the next 2 weeks. But I call it the blind leading the blind. I think that as worship leaders, we can get so caught up in the details or the macro things where it's almost like we become blind in a sense because of all the pressure that maybe you're experiencing with your pastor, of all the fuzziness, of all the muck that maybe you're receiving from people in your church. It could be family related. It could be something else that's going on in your heart, and that becomes a confusion. And then when we try to lead out from that in worship, it's difficult. And it doesn't mean that we have to reveal our baggage and be, like crystal clear to everybody. There's no way that humanly anyone can do that. But I really do believe that we tend to confuse a lot of different things when really the optimum goal of leading worship, first of all, is glorifying Christ and bringing honor to Him, but also edifying the church. So, and that kind of leads me to the next question I have for you, Jon, because when we talk about heart, some guys have spoken about heart over skill, skill over heart. In other words, if you have somebody in the worship team or they want to be on the worship team and they got a great love for God, but maybe their skills are not up to it and it's not up to par, what do you recommend? What do you do in that kind of situation?
Great question, and I see it all the time. One of my good friends here in Canada, his name is Chris Vache, wrote an awesome blog post.
Oh, yeah, Chris, great guy.
And he talks about Psalm 78, verse 72, and it's in reference to David, who, he was with the sheep as a shepherd, and then God picked him out of the pen to be a leader of God's people. And then it said this in verse 72 of Psalm 78. Actually, let me just read it for you so I don't
go for it.
Quote anything. Give me 2 seconds.
Almost up.
Canadian seconds are a little longer.
Oh, we're on 5 now.
It says, He cared for them with a true heart, number 1, and led them with skillful hands, number 2. So, heart and hands, you have to have both. So I'd say, if you have all heart, it's great. You can worship God, in your own way. You won't necessarily get on the platform at my church. But by the same token, if you're all hand and skill, but no heart, well, then you shouldn't be up there either way.
Yeah.
So for me, you need the healthy balance of both. And I'll just say one more story from my experience was I had an eager, zealous, young, potential worship leader in training who just, couldn't get some of his rhythm on guitar while he was singing.
Right.
And so, I saw it at practice, and so then I pulled him aside. We were talking, and I said, listen, your heart is all in. You're all in. You love God. You're ready to worship, but your guitar playing is not up to par, and you're supposed to be leading the band. And he said, yeah, just trust me, when I get up there with the mic, the anointing of God will be on me, and just trust me. And I said, I do trust you, but not that much and in that way. And so I had to take him to this verse and say, it's not just one or the other. It has to be both.
Yeah.
So I said, work on your guitar playing. Improve on it.
Answer
and then after that point.
Sorry, Jon, that was very rude.
I'm sorry.
No problem.
I confess.
We Canadians are very polite and patient.
Go ahead.
So, long story short, in taking him, not just my opinion, but in Scripture, showing, David, he was leading in his God-given role, his calling. Skillful hands, but a tender heart that's full of integrity. And God uses both together. So I said, go practice your guitar. You won't sing for a while. And when you can get better, and I see you're getting better, then I'll try you with the microphone and we'll see how that goes. And to be honest, he worked really hard on his guitar skills. And then he was one of my worship leaders for our young adult ministry.
Wow. That's awesome.
Hand and heart.
Yeah, I love that. And I remember that scripture, Psalm 77. That's one that I reflect on a lot. I love that. Thanks, Jon. So, because last episode we had Dwayne Moore, awesome friend, and talked about leadership and how do we lead our teams with better leadership. So kind of on your road, Jon, where you left off, how do we help our team members see themselves as leaders?
Is that to Stephanie or to me first?
Well, okay. Most team members see themselves as just a musician or just a singer. How do we help them see more than that?
Yes, in my experience, when I have a few musicians at our church that probably just think, well, I'm just the drummer. So what I try to help them realize is when you're on the platform, you're representing not only God, but also the senior leadership of our church, namely the senior pastor, the worship leader, and we're also trying to make them more aware that young children, when they look on the platform, they view you as a person that they can trust, as someone in leadership. You're serving on the stage alongside the pastor. Like, I try to spell it out in baby terms.
Right.
And in that sense, there's greater responsibility. You're not just the drummer. You're not just a backup singer at the back of the stage. You are viewed by young children, by the youth, by the church, as being a leader alongside the pastor and the worship leader.
That's right.
So that's, in a practical sense, for me, that it's really simple. It's, if you're on the stage, you're in a position of leadership.
Right. Awesome. Stephanie, what's your thought on that?
Well, I think we are modern day Levites when we're on the platform, and so I mean it was definitely a specific calling, a specific job, and so I think with that, we have to take it seriously, and so a doctor, you want him to be trained and skilled if he's gonna check you out and make sure you're healthy and help you get healthy. And same thing with any other trade. I think worship leading is no different as far as being skilled in what you do. But then it really is a complex calling, because there is that other layer of, hey, we've got to take care of people's souls and really care about what's happening in their lives, and so that is the pastor part of it. And I think one can't exist in the church without the other. So I think we have to be schooled in what we're doing, and we have to have practiced our scales and whatever it is that is our technical part of the calling. But then we just have to be close with God, so that our love for God is just so obvious, that people do trust us, and people care, allow us to care for them as their shepherd and as their pastor. So, I mean, I think they both have to go hand in hand, heart and hand.
Yeah, heart and hand. Awesome. Hey, by the way, that basket that's hanging up right behind you, what's inside of it?
Me?
Yeah, that little basket that's hanging right there behind you. What's in there? I'm curious.
Okay.
So you got some music to go along with that?
I am in my cleaning out and putting things away mode. No, this is very cool. I got this at a thrift store. And it's I am a thrift store borderline addict.
There has to be some worship leader out there right now saying, gosh, I got to have that on our stage.
Isn't that very cool? I love it. I mean, it's totally a fire hazard.
Can a whole coffee? Oh, fire hazard, even better.
Oh, yeah. So
coffee? The whole coffee?
You can add the candle in there.
Sweet. And the incense?
This makes me happy right here.
That's right. That's great. Jon, while she's putting that away, one last question for you. What is the one, regarding this topic about helping, enabling our worship leaders and worship team members about, heart before the beat, and I love that theme that you have on your site. What's the one thing overall that you keep coming back to?
Hmm. Probably the one thing I keep coming back to is how easy it is for us to lose focus, to get distracted, to be consumed with, like you said, even just those pictures, those Sunday seat pictures. We get so consumed in image. How do I look when I'm playing or when I'm singing? You
Yeah,
know, what is the reputation I carry with that, as opposed to, am I pleasing God's heart? And for me, that's what I keep coming back to. Is this just noise and a clanging cymbal, or
yeah,
is it a sweet aroma of worship
yeah.
that rises to his throne, that makes him happy, and causes him to smile down on us
That's
as
a
we do what we do? And so I think that's, in a nutshell, where I just find myself when I think heart before beat. That's where it is. Is it just noise, or are we getting it right?
I love that.
And that's why it's the focus. It just serves as a reminder to get back to the basics of worship, him and me.
Dude, can we fly you down here to Texas to help us lead worship? That'd be awesome.
I
My
know.
wife's actually a better singer. I can play drums for that service if you want.
Ah, love it. Stephanie?
Hey, I wanted to ask you a question, John, because I think it's so cool. Do you lead behind the drums, or do you just worship pastor from behind the drums, and you know what I mean, have other
No,
singer leaders?
well, I lead from acoustic guitar and keys.
Okay.
And he
Yeah.
has cymbals between his knees.
And
Wow.
no, drumming is something I've always done, and I continue to stay involved. But I do less and less at my church drumming, and I
Gotcha.
do more leading. And now, as our church is in transition, we have no senior pastor, so I'm
Hmm.
actually going to be leading the church through transition as the associate pastor.
Wow. That's
Cool.
awesome. I
So
wondered, because I wondered if you had some creative way of actually like leading from the drums, which I think would be cool.
Don Henley
I've
did
done it once.
it.
Yeah.
Just once, okay.
So do you count yourself off too?
Yes.
All the drummers are cringing right now. I know it. That was a bad joke. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. But hey, it was. Speaking of drummers, man. I mean, you guys have the most awesome heart. I love our drummer at our church. Her name is Naomi. Man. I mean, she is probably one of the best that I've worked with. Keeping time, but her heart is so there, and that's the whole cornerstone of this show today. Is the heart before the beat. So, John, thank you for speaking in to me of the topic for the show today. And it's such a pleasure to have you. Thank you for joining us.
Hey, my pleasure, man. Thanks for
Awesome.
having us.
You bet, dude. And Stephanie, as always, it's so great to have you back. We've been praying with you and everything, and
Thank
and
you.
looking forward to having you back at our future shows.
Sounds good. I've missed you all. Thanks for hanging with me during my transition. So,
Yes. And we also have our training tracks that we have to do.
yes. Oh, I forgot about that. Yeah, we've got
Yeah.
to.
And John, I'd like to rope you in on that too. That'd be kind of cool. Okay? You agree?
Sure. I don't know what it is, but sure.
But he's already in agreement. So that there you go. That's half of it. We're already there. So guys, hey, thanks for joining us today. Check it out. The next man, I'm so excited about today, and it's like I can't wait for the next 2 weeks because in 2 weeks on July 8th we're gonna have Rich Kirkpatrick, and this guy wrote the book The Six Hats of Leadership, or I think I'm getting it right. I'm sorry, Rich, if I got it wrong. But Rich has been around for a long time. Stephanie, I think you guys know each other
Yeah,
too, right?
super fun guy.
Yeah. And he's got like the coolest mustache, handlebars, the hat. I
Right?
mean, he's like he could totally kick Tim's butt, you know. So he's coming up July 8th, and then also after that we have David Stein. David Stein with the morning radio show in Atlanta called Rise and Stein. And this guy's fantastic, just awesome dude. He's actually a lead sound engineer who got saved back in 2006. So you got to hear his story. But man, we are so just excited about what you guys do week in and week out. Worship leaders, musicians, drummers, singers, everything. Pastors, audio leads, and tech. We're with you. If there's anything that we can do for you, hit us up at WorshipTT. Also follow us back on Facebook, as well as hit us up on our regular website, as you see right here, worshipteamtraining.com. See, I can do that from behind me. And you can find out about our workshops and our awesome mentoring programs. Just go to the mentoring page, and you'll see Stephanie, Tony, and Timmons, John Chisholm, I mean, just a slew of other guys, and Sally Morgenthaler. Be great. Anyway, blessings to you, and man, I don't want this show to end because it's just we've had so much fun today, and I love the conversation. So it was also just fantastic that we didn't have Tony and Timmons today. Anyway, hey, thank you guys for joining us.
I have one more question for you.
What's that?
I have one more question. What's this on your? Is that an urn up there?
An urn? Oh, you mean this right here? This,
Yeah.
this thing right here?
Uh-huh.
Everybody's probably been wondering what it is.
Well, I know, so
Ashes. No, it's the light bulb.
I know.
Nothing in it.
I was kind of teasing you.
It's environmentally friendly. It's not an urn, but thanks for asking. If it was an urn, I would like for that urn to be, what's the guy's name? Who's the awesome Christianity, Mere Christianity?
Oh, C.S. Lewis.
Yeah, it would be C.S. Lewis in there. That's who it would be. But it's not.
Okay.
By any means. Just General Electric. That's it.
See what that-
Anyway, hey, I'm sure people are already stopping the show by now because it's pointless at this moment. So anyway, if you are still watching, thank you very much. And again, great to have Jon Manna. Thanks so much again today. Stephanie, pleasure. Brandon, thank you very much. See you guys back next. Be sure to join us on July the 8th with Rich Kirkpatrick, and we look forward to seeing you next. So may God's blessings flow to you and your worship team. See you guys soon. Bye.
Bye.